Hey everyone, it's Bob Perkins with Crystal Knows, bringing you another Know Your Buyer podcast. This week I'm with Brooke Niesen. Brooke, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Bob.
Brooke's a senior account manager with AA-ISP. I remember back when I was there hiring you over 10 years ago. You've been at it a long time. And
Mhm.
Brooke, in your role, you wear a few different hats. You're doing some prospecting, you're following up on some leads, but you're
Mhm.
also an account manager and you've been working with some accounts for many, many years. So we're going to do a two-part series. The first week, we're going to talk about when you have to follow up on that lead, when you've never spoken with a person, maybe you don't even know the company. How do you
Mhm.
prepare to know the buyer? And then week number two, we'll talk about more when you've worked with an account for many, many years. How do you keep learning more about the account and knowing the buyer there? So let's start with, say you get a lead for some AISP training. How would you pre- prepare to best know the buyer?
Yeah, definitely. For a brand new lead that I'm not familiar with the company, the person, etc., first thing I'll do is I'll go to LinkedIn, want to get some information on the individual themselves, their role, their history, all of those details. And then I'll also do a little research on the company itself, understand the industry, the size, just to make sure I have a little bit of knowledge going into the call, just about who they are, what their experience is, and try to get a little bit of an idea where the conversation might go, but just have a good understanding going into it.
Yeah, that's great. And I know some leaders out there think, oh, I don't want my sales rep spending 20 minutes preparing for a call that could end, be a 2-minute call. How much time does it take you to do that about?
I usually spend a minute or two tops. If I get some good information from LinkedIn, I'll probably stop there. Sometimes I'll go to my CRM, check to see if there is past conversations, opportunities, etc. with that company. But I try to get as much information as I can in a little bit of time, just so I have enough to feel prepared. But I don't want to limit the call by feeling like I know too much or not enough.
Right. So just enough to maybe personalize the conversation. And let's say you look up the person, they're, let's say, a individual contributor versus a senior vice president.
Mhm.
Does that make it much of a difference? And if so, how?
Sure, it definitely does if that's why the research is important, because I would navigate that conversation differently. Of course, I'd want to understand what the inquiry was in the first place or how we got there with that individual, but see what opportunity there would be to bring in their leadership to the conversation. Sometimes it might just be an individual looking for themselves, but to see how I can really enhance on that conversation and get the most out of the person I'm talking to and then the company as a whole.
Great. Okay. So the takeaway today, you mentioned, LinkedIn. Today is one of the most powerful ways to prepare for a call, but you also mentioned looking up the company. Sometimes you can't get a lot on LinkedIn, so you have to go out to the web on that. And
Yep.
then you talked a little bit about the CRM. I think a lot of times, because we have so many tools out there, some sales reps forget to look at their CRM, which may have some history.
Yeah, you never know if it will or not. And sometimes, if all of your lead sourcing and routing is perfect, that might not happen. But in a perfect world, in our world, that certainly doesn't happen all the time. So I want to make sure if there were past conversations or opportunities that I'm at least a little bit familiar with what those were, just in case.
Okay, get to know your buyer, do some good quality pre-call research. Thanks so much for sharing those tips. Next week, we're going to talk about you working. I know you've worked with some companies for 5, 6, almost 10 years from the
Yeah.
beginning. We're going to talk about how do you continue to get to know your buyer? Because it's easy to get complacent a little bit and fall back into, oh, they're always going to buy from me sometimes.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to get after that week number 2. All right. We'll see you here next Monday. Know Your Buyer podcast. Thanks, Brooke.
See you, Bob.
Bye bye.